And I was asked to speak about the topic TFA in waters, PFAS pesticides, and a bit the SUD, but the previous speaker has already commented a bit on that. For those of you who don't know me, I am Klaus Berend, the Director for Food Safety, Sustainability and Innovation in DG Health and Food Safety of the European Commission, and among others responsible for the legislation on the placing on the market and use of pesticides, in the future also the SUD, and but also maybe important the legislation on contaminants in food, where PFAS are also an issue. So, as a bit of a context, I wanted to recall that in the big PFAS restriction proposal under the REACH regulation that 5 member states have prepared, and that is under at the moment under discussion in the European Chemicals Agency, the substances used as active substances in plant protection products or biocidal products were exempt, because the dossier submitters reckon that we have specific legislation for these and can deal with them appropriately under that specific legislation. And indeed, for plant protection products, this is Regulation 1107/2009. It is definitely among the strictest, if not the strictest, worldwide. Active substances are subject to rigorous risk assessments, and the approvals are also periodically reviewed. The criteria for approval already consider persistency, toxicity, and bioaccumulation, as well as water pollution, both surface water and groundwater, which are the key properties of concern for PFAS substances. Also, the criteria are very robust in the sense that substances that are carcinogenic, mutagenic, or toxic to reproduction, or endocrine disruptors, or persistent organic pollutants, or PBTs, or very persistent, very bioaccumulating, they are not eligible for approval under the EU rules unless very, very narrow derogation possibilities are met. And also pesticides that as compounds themselves or relevant metabolites that pollute groundwater above 0.1 microgram per liter, they can also not be approved for use in the EU. The situation on 1st of October this year was that we have at the moment 31 active substances that are falling under the definition of PFAS. 9 are so-called candidates for substitution, which means that the member states can only authorize products containing them if no reasonable alternatives are available. For one of them, the approval will expire tomorrow. It's mentioned here on the slide, the name. And one is a PFAS only under the extended OECD definition, but it belongs to a group of substances that are excluded from the REACH restriction proposal because it doesn't contain a molecular moiety that leads to the formation of TFA when metabolized. For 25 of these 31 substances, the renewal process is currently ongoing. And for the remaining 6, the renewal process will start in the future. For 2 of them already next year. I would also like to mention that over the past years, as a result of the strict criteria to which I referred, around 20 PFAS active substances have been removed from the EU market, either because their approval expired and there was no interest in applying for a renewal, or because we actively took a decision to prohibit them after an evaluation. And most recently, this was done for triflusulfuron and for flufenacet. Exposure and risk of active substances and their metabolites, such as TFA, are assessed as part of the evaluation under the Plant Protection Products Regulation. We look at exposure of humans via diet, but also non-dietary exposure pathways. We look at exposure of non-target organisms and indeed the environment, including in particular surface and groundwater. Now, looking specifically at residues, the EFSA, the European Food Safety Authority, every year publishes reports on the monitoring results of residues in food and feed, and over 80,000 samples are analyzed every year by the member states. And they looked in particular at the occurrence of the PFAS substances in the period 2011 to 2021. And they found that in 99% of the cases for fruits and vegetables, there were no quantifiable residues of PFAS substances. The possible formation and uptake of TFA in crops and the environment and the possibility for contamination of groundwater are assessed, as I already mentioned. And if we find in the assessment that there is a potential to lead to pollution above the 0.1 microgram per liter limit, and this cannot be mitigated via appropriate measures to reduce exposure, then the substance cannot be approved. And indeed, as already mentioned by the earlier speakers, concerns around TFA have grown over recent years, and there are also challenges regarding its detection in standard regulatory studies, and this is being followed up, as I will explain in the next slides. And for TFA, it's also important to recall that it is a substance that originates from multiple sources, not only pesticides. For example, refrigerants or blowing agents used in industrial production and emissions therefrom lead to atmospheric deposition via rain. Then there is pollution from factories itself, from wastewater, from liquid manure. And then, of course, also there is a contribution from the plant protection products from the substances, the active substances are PFAS. But I want to emphasize that the PFAS in pesticides are clearly not the only source of pollution. The exposure routes and the sources and the importance of the different sources may vary between the member states, and even within areas in specific member states, depending on the nature of agriculture, which kind of industry is present, and very important to underline also that TFA is found in areas where there is no use of plant protection products. I've mentioned here on the slide a study conducted in Switzerland in that regard, and also a report from Denmark from last year concluded that precipitation contains TFA at a concentration between 0.2 and 1 microgram per liter, and is indeed a major source of groundwater pollution. Then for TFA also at the moment, we have a process for harmonized classification and labeling under the chemicals legislation ongoing. And the deadline for the European Chemicals Agency to deliver its opinion is 26th of October next year. And we have in the meantime already asked also the European Food Safety Authority to reassess the toxicological reference values for TFA, and the public consultation on the draft assessment was already carried out, and EFSA intends to finalize its output in February 2026. We have also sent a second mandate to both EFSA and ECHA, particularly focusing on the formation of TFA in soil and water. Our colleagues from DG Environment have signed an agreement with the World Health Organization to determine the relevant PFAS in drinking water and recommend health-based values for those relevant PFAS. And we've also launched, again, DG Environment has launched a study to analyze treatment techniques and their related costs for PFAS and TFA, and in particular for their removal from drinking water. So what are we planning to do next now, in particular in relation to the PFAS active substances in pesticides? We will continue, as I mentioned, all the ongoing evaluation procedures, where in addition to the active substance itself, the metabolites, including TFA, will be analyzed. And we believe that a case-by-case approach is needed, since the formation of TFA varies depending on the substance, depending on the soil that is prevalent in the different regions of the member states. And the conclusions from the mandates that we gave to EFSA and ECHA will be integrated into these ongoing assessments. In the meantime, and this is a general principle of the Plant Protection Products Regulation, the member states are entitled to take action to amend or withdraw authorizations of plant protection products containing PFAS if they have indications that they are problematic in terms of pollution of the environment or for human health. And in the beginning, it was already mentioned that Denmark has taken action in this regard by withdrawing a number of authorizations for certain plant protection products. We also continue discussing this topic with the member states in the Standing Committee. And also Germany and the Netherlands have already approached us, suggesting early reviews for the 6 PFAS substances where an evaluation is not already ongoing. Then a quick word also on what we are doing under the Sustainable Use Directive, and the previous speaker already referred to that, so I'm not going to repeat everything, but very important is indeed that after the rejection of the proposal for the SUR regulation, the Sustainable Use Regulation, by the Parliament and its subsequent withdrawal by the Commission, we focus now again on a better implementation of the SUD directive, because in particular, as mentioned by the previous speaker, the potential and the possibilities of integrated pest management are not fully implemented and not satisfactorily implemented in most member states. And what is also clear is that farmers need help and support, in particular via good advisory services, and also having a toolbox for plant protection available that allows them to effectively protect their crops, and preferably a toolbox with better alternatives than some of the chemical pesticides that are today used still a lot. We are also measuring progress towards reducing use and risks from chemical pesticides as part of the Sustainable Use Directive. And for that purpose, harmonized risk indicators have been agreed by the member states that are a bit different from the ones that Denmark uses in its national context. And this indicator and the latest data for 2023 show indeed a significant progress already in the reduction of the risks from pesticide use as measured by this indicator. And on the slide, and I've made the slides available to the organizers, they can be shared with everybody. You have a link to a website where more information is available on this. So as I said, and this is my last slide, we have resumed activities with the member states to work towards a better implementation of the Sustainable Use Directive, in particular, better implementation of integrated pest management. We want also in changes to the Plant Protection Products Regulation that will come as part of a so-called simplification omnibus in December. We want to increase the availability of biocontrol and other low-risk solutions so that farmers have faster access to these and can replace more harmful chemical pesticides. We are also clearly looking at the potential of digital tools and precision application to reduce exposure from the use of pesticides. That was also already mentioned by the previous speaker. So this is clearly an area where a lot is happening at the moment. And we strongly believe that farmers need support via better advisory services. Again, I think Denmark is a very good example in this regard. And last but not least, we have also proposed to simplify regulation or legislation to bring new plant varieties on the market that are produced by new genomic techniques, in particular those that are resistant to pests, so that fewer pesticides need to be used. And we know that the Danish presidency is a big fan of the proposal and is doing a lot to get the negotiations with the parliament over the finishing line. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention. On this slide, you have links for some further information that you might wish to look up. And again, thanks for the invitation to speak at this conference and explain what we are doing in the area of PFAS substances used in plant protection products.
Thank you very much for this very concise and clear presentation. It's obvious that it's a very complex issue, not only from the toxicological point of view, but also from the more management and administrative point of view. I hope you can stay with us just to take one or two questions
Yep.
from the audience.
Yeah, I still have 25 minutes that I can stay with you. Yep.
I would like to invite questions from the audience. Please present yourself with name and affiliation and short questions.
I will try to make it short. Thank you very much, Klaus, for the presentation. I'm Sissel Dykker from a Swedish-based environmental organization called Kempesek. And I work very much with the universal PFAS restriction proposal, where, as you said, the pesticides have been excluded, as we said, that there is other legislation that can take care of the PFAS in the pesticides. So I would just like to know, now that you presented all your work you do and the development in new authorizations, new risk assessments, new scientific studies, what would you see if you look at the crystal ball for the next 5-10 years? Do we still have PFAS, including the TFA, forming PFAS in pesticides in 5-10 years, or how do you see the development in the future? Thank you.
Yeah, my standard answer to these questions is forecasts are notoriously...
We'll take one more question for you before...
yeah, okay. Sorry, then I need to take notes, otherwise I will forget.
Are there more questions here from the audience? Yeah, here in the front row. And present yourself.
Yes, it's Angeliki Lismaru from Pan Europe. Hello, Klaus, thank you very much for your presentation. There was one issue I'm thinking when you say that you are going to look into the PFAS pesticide substance by substance. And I wonder, I would propose that this is a good opportunity to implement the precautionary principle and maybe not go substance by substance, but apply to all the potential precursors of TFA. So what's your views on this point? Thank you.
Okay, I think I'll pass the floor to you, Klaus Berend. One about the crystal ball and one more question, please.
Yeah, the second is also a bit of a crystal ball question, but my standard answer to the crystal ball question is forecasts are notoriously difficult, in particular if they concern the future. But when we look back over the outcome of the assessments in recent years, for the PFAS active substances, they were mostly negative. So there were always problems leading to a proposal from the Commission for non-renewal of approval, either because of the water pollution with TFA or because of other properties of the substances, such as substance being an endocrine disruptor or other problematic areas that were identified during the risk assessment. That said, we have one case on the table at the moment, which is particularly problematic. It's fluorotanyl, because the outcome of the assessment is indeed not very good. But on the other hand, the farming community, in particular the potato growers, are basically saying without this substance, it is not possible to grow potatoes. And I think this is also an issue, and maybe the speakers from Denmark after me can also look into that. But also in Denmark, this is a problem at the moment in relation to this particular substance for this particular use. And that brings me to, and then therefore my forecast for the next 10 years, or where will we be in the next 10 years? My expectation is that for many of these PFAS under evaluation, in the end, the outcome of the risk assessment might be negative, but maybe not for all. And as mentioned in the example of fluorotanil, we might have situations where for some of them it is extremely difficult to renounce to them completely. And that brings me to Angelique's question. Of course, we know that this is your request, Angelique. Your organization, PAN, has written to us already on many occasions on this and also launched an Aarhus request for an omission to act. So we know that you would like this, but we are of the firm conviction that the regulation foresees a substance-by-substance assessment. And as I mentioned in one of my slides, not all substances have the same properties in terms of what toxicological properties they have and what metabolites they generate and in what amounts they generate the various metabolites. The conditions are very different, and also the needs for a particular substance are different. So we believe that it is appropriate to continue with this case-by-case, very thorough assessment. But again, my expectation is that in many of the cases, ultimately the outcome might be negative. But then we also have a firm basis for adopting a decision that will also stand in court in case a company launches action against a non-renewal or non-approval decision.
Thank you very much for these replies. I'm not sure there are more questions from the audience. We can take one more question here. And please present yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Paul Henning Petersen from Danish Advisory Service for Agriculture. I would like to ask you if you think there could be other metabolites which in future will be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Not fluor, TFA, but you can imagine other substances.
Mm-hmm. Yes, metabolites are a wide area and also way beyond the PFAS substances, also for other active substances. The question of what metabolites are generated in the environment, in the soil, in plants, maybe after human consumption, or when animals eat feed with residues of pesticides, it's really examined for all cases in great detail. And yes, there are probably also other metabolites that are problematic. They are the so-called relevant metabolites because they have toxicological or ecotoxicological properties of concern. I cannot name you now one that would be comparable to the TFA that is generated by many of these PFAS substances, but I do remember that the pyrethroids, they also generate certain types of metabolites that are shared across different substances, or the triazoles, fungicides, they generate metabolites that are shared across different substances. And in each of these cases, we have done what we are now doing also for TFA. We have tasked EFSA to look at them across the board, in particular in the area of residues or indeed water pollution. So yeah, there are families of substances, and it's not so surprising looking at chemistry, that have a tendency to generate similar metabolites, and they indeed might be problematic. And maybe just one more comment on that, if you allow. That is also one of the reasons why we believe very strongly that the future of plant protection in Europe must be much more bio-based, biocontrol-based, which is one of the motivations for proposing in the forthcoming simplification package measures to accelerate the assessment and coming to the market of biocontrol pesticides, which we still need to define also as part of that, because at the moment there's no full alignment on what is considered to be biocontrol or not.